So today we're talking about leadership. And this is actually an aspect of the masculine feminine dynamics that allow us to actually join together. And leadership, one of the reasons I love talking about it is because it's an aspect of this masculine feminine dynamic that is most commonly felt as in its dysfunctional form. So imagine that the masculine and feminine, if you're new to this idea, the way that I'm going to explain it, there's a lot of masculine and feminine out there that has nothing to do with union or joining or creating bliss together. It's just a power struggle. But if we look at the masculine and feminine in terms of how it joins together, how they join together to create wholeness, to create bliss, to experience oneness, that's very, very different, right? And historically, for whatever reason, we have experienced each other in separation, right? We haven't been able to be open and join together. So there hasn't been trust and there hasn't been understanding, and we almost really couldn't even see each other. So if we wanted to interact, and if you imagine that every interaction we have with anything really in the world, but let's just talk about humans, it will be in a masculine feminine dynamic. And this isn't gendered or anything like that. It could be that if we're really going to interact, let's say we're going to have a conversation. Well, to have a conversation, one person will be in the energy of speaking and the other one is in the energy of receiving, right? So now you've created a oneness, you've created a conversation. If one person's talking and the other person's talking, you're not actually in union. You're just sort of battling at each other. Or if one person's listening and the other person's listening, you're just hanging out in the sunshine, but you're not having a conversation, right? So this idea of how do humans connect in a way that creates something new is this masculine feminine dynamic. And they're just simply different kinds of energy that complement each other. They actually feed each other. They nourish each other. And it isn't just like sometimes we think of masculine as CrossFit and yoga is feminine. That's not, those don't complement each other, right? That's just sort of what we've done in the world because we don't understand, right? So we can imagine how this disconnection has happened in this leader-follower dynamic. Because if someone wants to be the leader and we do it in disconnection, that person just simply controls anyone beneath them. Like you even hear in this, it's a hierarchy. I'm at the top because I'm the leader, and everyone is below me because you're my followers, right? It's this weird hierarchy. But that's not about union. That's about control. That's about unhealthy ego. Like anyone who wants to control others, anyone wants to be that boss that just feels powerful. It's not even like an ego drive. It's actually a broken ego drive because they're actually lacking any true sense of self. Because if we actually were connected to our sense of self, we'd realize the infinite beings we are, and we wouldn't ever want to control anyone, right? But there's a lot of that in the world. So this idea of leading and following is almost scary, right? I don't want to be in a leadership position because I don't want to be seen as being controlling, or I don't want to be in a following position because I don't want to lose my power, right? Because this has been the dynamic. But the leading following dynamic is actually beautiful. It's actually a beautiful in union. It serves everyone. So for example, let's begin with, and we're going to talk about how this works in life, how it works in business, how it works in parenting, how it works within, all these things, because it's a really powerful dynamic. Because that's the thing about when we bring the polarities together, we create something bigger than we could have done on our own. And this is really important, that it's It isn't just two people coming together. It's literally when the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. It's not just, oh, we're just coming together. It's when we come together, amazing things happen because we feed each other. And this is the leader and follower dynamic. So let's take the example of ballroom dancing. In ballroom dancing, the intention is to come together. Two people come together to dance, to become one. And something amazing happens when those two people come together and they swirl around the dance floor as a couple, as a oneness. It's different. You can watch one person go, wow, that's amazing. You can watch a bunch of people dancing independently, right? I'm kind of dancing, I'm hearing the music, I'm moving my body, right? It's all good. I can do that in a group. But if I see someone and I actually want to merge with that person, I want to dance with that person and become one, something new has to happen. And in order for us to actually merge to become one, we have to polarize. The intention is not to be an individual. The intention is to be part of a new whole. So we choose a leader and follower. But this isn't chosen because one person is more powerful than the other. There's no power, there's no control, there's nothing like that. One person simply chooses to lead and the other person chooses to follow. Now within that, we often will have preferences that we may love to be in the feminine following role and someone else loves to be in the masculine leading role. And that is something that's really interesting. In that instance, when it's two people coming together, we often will have a preference. And it's not always, but we often will. In life, it's different. In groups, in business, some people may rise as leaders, some people may choose to be in the following group, but it's all dependent on the project, right? If we all got together, who's here right now, and we chose to do this project, it may make sense that that person over there rises as the leader and we all go, oh, excellent, yeah, let's just follow, their lead. And then if we were doing a different project, it would make sense to choose that person as a leader, and we'll go, yeah, that person knows what's going on, we'll follow their lead, right? So it's very different in the world. But let's come back to the dancing. So what's interesting about the dancing, the leader's job is to hear the music, choose the steps, and lead the dance. The follower's job is to fully surrender to the lead. So this feels, according to our old paradigm of control and disconnection, this feels like, oh, so the leader gets to choose everything and the follower just has to follow, right? It feels like a lack of power because everything's been a power struggle up until this point because we've been disconnected. But that's not how it is, because in this union, the masculine always actually follows the feminine. The masculine actually reads the feminine, and that's what dictates the dance. And I've used this example before in previous talks where imagine you have this great person who's and I'm going to use a male-female dynamic just because, I don't know, that's just historically whatever, but imagine you have this guy and he's this great leader, right? And he sees this woman across the wedding, or whatever, and she has this great cha-cha dress, right? And it's funny, as I'm making this all like heteronormative, the truth is, I used to teach dance. I used to teach ballroom dance and belly dance and all kinds of things. So because I was a teacher, I'm a very good leader because I had to teach the leaders and the followers. And oftentimes, I'm the one who was actually going around the party going, hey, do you want to dance? Do you want to dance? And I'm the leader. So it's hilarious that I'm telling this as a male-female thing. But so what does the leader do? The leader sees this person in a cha-cha dress and obviously thinks, wow, okay, they've obviously taken dance lessons because they're specifically wearing a performance dress, right? So they say, oh, would you like to dance? Yes, I love this song, right? And so they get up there. And at the beginning, there's sort of this play with each other, right? There's sort of this, okay, because what the leader's doing is they are not testing like testing, but I'm just going to use that word. They're testing what does this person like to do? What's their style of dance? Do they love a million spins? Are they kind of like slow and sensual? Are they really gregarious? What's this person's style? So the leader, in order to create union, must read the feminine partner to kind of get a sense of them, because the goal is union. The only bliss in the dance comes from when they click. And that click happens, union is achieved, and then everyone watching is kind of just spellbound by this union flowing around the dance floor, right? So the first step is the leader reads the follower. And they have this wild and crazy dance, and it's epic, right? So that song is over. They go to their corners or whatever, but the leader still wants to dance. So they're looking around the room and they see this, and I'm just going to use this, granny, and who's been taking, rumba classes or something nice and slow and lovely. And they go over and they say, hey, do you want to dance? Oh, yes, I do, right? And so they get up, and now what happens? The leader reads this person and says, okay, well, my legs are a foot longer than theirs, and they're kind of moving kind of slowly. All right. So then that leader shortens their step and starts to move nice and slowly, kind of playing with this person. And that person says, whoa, this person's really, they're paying attention to me. Oh, well, I'm going to relax into this. And then the feminine partner relaxes into it. And then the leader says, hey, they're really trusting me. They're feeling the connection. I wonder if we can just do this nice little walk around turn. And then the person and the follower goes, oh, wow, they did this nice walk around turn, which is just perfect for me. This is wonderful. And they relax a little bit more. And all of a sudden, this beautiful union happens, and they are flowing around the dance floor. Right? This is a great leader. Right? And so this applies to business, family, the community, everything. A great leader serves the followers, serves the feminine, because it creates union, because it creates the opportunity for creation. So let's say, for example, we take this to the business world, and you have a project. The goal of the project, and I'm going to say this in an ideal world. I know there's a lot of politics and things aren't quite so clear in business, right? But in an ideal world, you have a project that you want to create. You have assembled a team, right? Everyone, you've got all the people with all the right skill sets there. The best thing to have is also a good leader. And this person often, I genuinely believe that most leaders are born. I think you can learn how to be a leader if you really want to, and especially if you've been trained by someone or you've had a good example of what a really excellent leader is. But a lot of times people are born leaders and they just rise up. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's even kids out in the playground and they're playing, well, what should we do? What game do we want to play? Unless it's a bully, right? That's different, right? Then nobody wants to play. But oftentimes there'll be that kid in the playground that always has a great idea for a new game, right? And they kind of go, hey, I've got an idea. Let's do this. Okay, see that hill over there? That's the castle. And the kids are all like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, this is a good game, right? There are people who just simply have great ideas and other people want to follow, right? There's no loss of power. They've heard a great idea and said, that'll be fun. I want to play. And then those people all contribute to the game. Who came up with the idea is irrelevant. because now we're just playing, right? This is where we have to release this whole idea of the one that is in the leadership position is at the top of the hierarchy. No, this is just how we all play together. That's all. It's not a, there's no hierarchy here. So back to the project team. A good leader, its only joy, its only goal is to get the job done. And the best way to get the job done is to have every single person in the room well within their skill set, with the freedom to create exactly according to that skill set, according to those gifts. And then all of those juicy people collaborate and create something incredibly rich. That's where something really new and amazing is created. So a real leader, a genuine leader, they naturally, and this is where it's curious that I believe some leaders are born, and we can learn it, but the born leaders, when they walk into a room, they instantly assess every person, and not in a judgment grading way, but if they can't help themselves. They will instantly know what the giftings are of every single person in the room. They will look around and go, okay, that's the people person, that's the one doing the math, this person understands the community, this person knows the science, this person gets the tech. Okay, like they will instantly assess the room. So then when it comes time, okay, what's the first stage that we're going to step into? That good leader will say, okay, I'd like you to take this role, you take this role, this, and everyone in the room knows that that person saw them. They know that that person respects their giftings. They know that person respects what they bring to the team. And so they're really happy to say, awesome, yeah, that's the part I wanted to do anyway. So everybody's really happy. So now let's say they complete the project, right? A few months go by, a new project is called, a new team is assembled. They walk into the room, and that leader is in the room, and they go, oh, good. I love working with this person, right? And see what's interesting about a good leader is they also listen, right? They listen to the people because they respect them. So if the people in the room, and realize the people in the room also smell out a good leader. They know when someone's there serving the whole as opposed to serving themselves. And if people know that you're serving the whole, even their feedback will be really helpful, because you're not going to have this power struggle, right? You're doing this. So then all of a sudden, someone might say, oh, you know what? I have this idea. And the leader's listening because they're integrating this new knowledge. They know that they need to know everything from everybody in order to make the right choices, to create the structure that everyone can work within to create this new thing, right? So they're happy to receive all inputs. Imagine working in a workspace where your feedback is welcome because you're respected for what you're good at. So this is the difference when you go into a workplace, and let's say even beyond a project manager, you have a boss. Well, the bottom line, that boss, again, not in a power thing, but in a, I've always wanted to have a business that created this. Okay, you know what? I need to hire people who can help me manifest this vision. The people who get hired, they're like, wow, I love this vision. I want to be a part of this, right? That boss's job is to simply create the container, the structure for all these people to come together so that they as a whole can serve the community in this way, right? And the blessing, and this is the whole thing about the weird thing about being the follower. In true masculine feminine dynamic, nobody forces anything because energy doesn't lie. A good leader, people want to follow. Maybe because they know that, you know what? this person's a great boss, they're a great business owner, and they really respect their employees. And I know that I'm going to enjoy working here, and I know that my job is secure. Whew, I don't have to worry about that, right? It's kind of oftentimes people, if they've had a lot of difficulty in the workplace, they'll often say, well, I just want to be self-employed, right? I mean, lots of people become self-employed because they have an entrepreneurial spirit. But a lot of people become self-employed because they're just sick of dysfunctional workplaces where there's all of this power over and then power between, and everything's just a nightmare, right? But being self-employed means you now have to be your own leader. You now have to create the structure, and you have to carry the stress of the business and the profits, and is there even money for rent and all this kind of thing, right? And this is where not everyone's a born leader. And that includes even being self-employed. For a lot of people, that's a huge stress. They don't want to be the boss. They don't want to hire people. They don't want to deal with all that. The born leaders thrive on it. They love the chess pieces, putting them all together. Okay, yeah, and they love this. They thrive. And there's a difference between I can handle it and thriving on it. It's almost like I love this challenge. It takes all of my soul, it takes all of my giftings to sort out this interesting mental gymnastics. And you know when someone loves that challenge, because these are the people you work for who don't seem to ever be stressed out about anything. Things can go kind of sideways, and they're kind of like, okay, they kind of sort it out. Maybe they have great advisors. Maybe they just really trust the people. Maybe who knows? But they sort it out, and all of a sudden everything's flowing well again. But the leader doesn't seem to look like they did anything. Right? Those businesses that seem to run themselves, and the boss doesn't seem to do anything. And if you're not careful, and if you've never run your own business, you won't realize that that person is a genius. That's why it seems like they're never doing anything, but they're actually great leaders. Because, and again, you kind of look at the milieu, you look at the people. Are they happy? Are they content? Are people satisfied? Yes. Interesting, right? A well-oiled ship doesn't seem to be hard. Whereas someone who isn't a born leader, and they are the boss for whatever reason, maybe they got there because they just wanted the money. Maybe they liked the prestige. Maybe they, whatever, always wanted to own their own business because it was an ego thing, right? This person will perpetually remind you of how hard their job is and how thankful they'd better be for having the job and all the work they do and all this stuff, right? Because they're just not made for it, And I'm not saying, to point fingers at people. It's just an awareness, right? It's just an awareness that we've had very dysfunctional leadership in the past, right? They may not have had good role models either, right? The other interesting leader at work can often be in the workplace, can often simply be a thought leader. It can be that person that maybe they hire in as a consultant who just has a different way of seeing things, a different way of understanding the industry or understanding even the interactions between the industry and the community. And they have these great thoughts. And as an employee, you kind of listen going, wow, I really like this. So this masculine feminine dynamic appears because you like the way they think. So you kind of go, yeah, tell me more. I'm all in. And those people appear in business all the time. They might be colleagues, they might be bosses, they might be anyone in the business. It's not about a position of authority and all this, right? Again, like even all of our words are so hierarchical, right? It's not about that. The thought leaders of the business literally could have any job. But they may have their fingers on the pulse of what's going on. And then we will listen to them and go, tell me more. I want to know, right? So if we get out of the workplace and we go into life, right, and we imagine what real leaders look like in the community. Real leaders, for example, they show up as brilliant sports coaches, right? They're the ones that they kind of have this big picture. They look at all, like say the kids on the team, they look at all the kids on the team and they go, all right. And they instantly can suss out the group. They instantly suss out the interactions between them. They know who the aggressive ones are. They know this. And they also know how to tailor the training so that everybody thrives, right? Because again, the goal is the success of the whole, right? A dysfunctional coach is in there because they want their team to win no matter what, because it's about them. And the kids are kind of just pawns in their ego game, right? Well, the kids don't want to play with that person anyway. And you'll see the incredible dysfunction in the team. They'll be fighting, parents yelling, all this like this. Oh, it just creates chaos. But a good coach whose goal is the building up of the character of the kids, the building up of the kids' skills, and the ability to work as a team and actually play as a team, those kids will absolutely listen because, again, energy doesn't lie. And the kids know that, wow, this person's really taking care, right? And the parents, too, if any parents get out of line, because, parents can go crazy sometimes. Any parent goes out of line, that coach is so clear, and they just look at them and go, we're in this for the whole. You make your choice whether you want your child to be part of this whole or not. But we have no prima donnas. We have no this. We don't pick on the kids that are struggling. Here, we are here for the whole. That's my job as the leader. And everybody, it's almost like we all respond so positively to that. One, we feel safe. We know that our kids are being seen. We're learning ourselves how to play with others, right? True. But again, they're kind of born that way, But again, at the same time, if someone found themselves in a leadership position and it wasn't necessarily their gifting, sure, they could learn, right? You just have to know that your job isn't to power over. Your job is to actually bring everybody together according to their gifts, right? In the community, we always find these leaders too, because there'll be a project, again, that happens in the community. And this person will have a great vision, but you can always smell if it's about that person's name getting on it, and then they just have to fight for it, Or they just simply, they have a great idea for the community, and people can just tell that, wow, this person really is into the community. You know what? I'd love to help out. What can I do? And then someone like, hey, I'd love to contribute financially to that. What can I do? And this is, I think, what's really interesting. Like, there's an entire shift in consciousness happening in the world where we can smell this out sooner. We don't have to stay oppressed. We don't have to do as we're told. You can't guilt us into things anymore. You can't, use fear to control us anymore. I can see you. We know this. And it's like, no, if you aren't a healthy leader, I have no interest in following you. I have a healthy leader within, right? 100 years ago, we may not have had this ability or this freedom. But today we do, which is why it's interesting to look at this leader-follower dynamic and kind of understand what it looks like in a really functional way. And then if we feel called to be a leader at some point, then we know how to do it, right? We know how to serve the whole. And to even know that, maybe this person rises up as the leader, but then they equally can be a part of. I remember one time I used to own this train station that I used to do all my teaching out of, and it's like a wellness center community space. And there was this one guy that used to come teach for me. He used to teach like business type things, right? Really interesting guy. But he was this huge personality, like an absolute born leader, right? He just commanded the room, and he was physically big, big booming voice, big booming presence, right? And I remember him coming in and just leading huge rooms of people, right? And I was always amazed by him because it just was, he is so strong in that leadership role, and he owned businesses around town. He was just that commanding presence, you know. And then one day I was teaching a class on something, some kind of spiritual class. And he signed up for it as a student. And I remember thinking, wow, how's this going to go? Right? Like, is he going to take over the class? Is he going to, you know, like sometimes people who love being in the leadership role, they're perpetually kind of putting up their hand and they're not really asking questions. They're just simply taking the floor, right? Which is can be really distracting when you're teaching, right? So I was really worried about this guy taking my class. I was like, because I mean, we were friends, right? I mean, we'd worked together a lot, and I just didn't want to have that struggle with him. He walked into the class, sat down in the room, and it's like he just energetically blended with everybody. Like it's actually like this big booming human that I normally witnessed him as disappeared. And he just became a student, full listening, full receiving. And it was the most amazing lesson for me to watch him do that, to watch him morph into, I am not the leader right now. I'm here to learn. Tomorrow, I will now be in a leadership position again. And I think this ability to be able to morph based on our situation is so valuable in life, right? To be able to respond to the situation, that just because maybe we're a leader here, or maybe in our family or in our work, to always be dynamic, that you know that you just might walk into the room and go, whoa, I like what this person's saying. And to have that ability to go, all right, I'm stepping down, I'm like gonna enjoy this and I'm gonna fully follow. There's such a thrill in following, like such a thrill. Like this was a huge deal for me when I opened a dance studio in 2006 with a man who was an incredible dancer, like an incredible teacher. And I was super shy, super quiet. And so I was like, just let me do the math, let me do the business. I'll just do the back end. But I love to dance, which is why, we partnered. And so he and I used to go out and do performances in public. For me to learn to follow was so hard. My husband didn't really feel comfortable dancing a lot at the time. He's a great dancer now, but at the time he didn't feel comfortable dancing. So if we went to weddings or we went out dancing, I would just backlead him, right? And I was really accustomed to backleading, and I was a really good backleader. And it was really a lesson to have this strong dancer who, he'd been my dance partner, he'd been dancing for 30 years, teaching dance. He was a strong lead, and he broke my requirement to backlead. Like he finally got rid of that thing in me because I couldn't backlead him. I didn't want to backlead him. And once I felt the bliss of surrender to an excellent lead, well, actually, it was funny because we'd be dancing around, and I remember we would be in this sort of like dancer position, and my head would just sort of be off over my shoulder, and my eyes would practically roll back in my head while I just floated around the dance floor, like actually giving up control, that full surrender to the universe almost. But he was the universe, he was the leader. And I learned something wonderful about the bliss of following a great leader, right? So the last thing I just want to mention is about leading in families. And what's interesting about family, and whether you're a parent or whether you were, I mean, obviously you were a child at some point, and we can look at the family dynamics we grew up in. When we have a really healthy parental thing, and again, it's really easy to be critical about this because historically we've only ever had this disconnect, right? We've only ever had this power over. And we certainly have seen this in the family dynamic too. Like, it's not just men over women, bosses over employees, government over the people, kings over the serfs or something. It's in this dysfunctional, disconnected, masculine over feminine thing. It's almost was just a consciousness that we felt it in marriage, we felt it everywhere, and we also felt it in parental experiences with children, right, with family, which is, I think, why we didn't notice it and we just normalized it, because it was literally everywhere in the world, right? So what does that look like in family? That dysfunctional, disconnected is a power over. That the role of the parent is to punish, to put kids on their right path, to mold them, to make them into, maybe sometimes it's living vicariously through the children, because maybe the parents were so oppressed growing up, their only chance of freedom is to live through the children, so they just control the children as if they're controlling themselves, right? Or, that spare the rod, spoil the child thing, right? That's the role, is this disconnected power thing. And the child just simply does as they're told, and they are a good boy and a good girl is someone who does what they're told without questioning, right? This is our first experience of this dysfunctional leader-follower idea, right? So now we imagine, what does that look like in union? What does a healthy leader-follower dynamic look like in parenting and child rearing? Well, then all of a sudden the leader, again, you imagine in the dancing thing, right? The leader looks at the children and how different all children are, and to recognize too that this child is not you, right? That's a really big deal. Imagine if that dance leader looked at that person and expected that person to know every step they knew and have all the training they had. That's just projecting themselves onto the follower, and then criticizing the follower for not being a good enough dancer for them, right? If you've ever taken dance classes, you've seen this dynamic. And so we see it all over. So it's the same thing. A good leader, as a parent, observes the child. They don't run circles around the child or the children. They simply observe them and say, aha, okay, I'm sussing out what's going on here. Okay, imagine, maybe there's 4 children and they're planning a family vacation. And they go, okay, well, and they just know this instinctively, right? Because they look and they go, okay, well, this child really needs to make sure they have some alone time. This one needs lots of activity. This one definitely wants to make sure they get French fries. This one, whatever, wants to have time to read a book. That parent will consider all of those needs and come up with a plan. And all the kids will be happy because they'll know that, oh, well, we've got to do the water park because, my brother and sister really like that. But later we're going to have some quiet time and I'm going to get to just be by myself and read my book, right? There's like this knowing that the parent is considering everyone, right? So the kids are kind of happy to go along with it. But as soon as children realize that the parent isn't considering them, for whatever reason, I mean, sometimes we're just kids having kids, we just don't even know better, right? Oftentimes, as soon as the child realizes that the parent is only simply doing what they want to do, and it doesn't matter what the child wants to do, the child rebels because they're sort of the unwilling follower, right? It's like, and it's the same dynamic that maybe that person will continue on into the workplace or in relationships or whatever. But it's really an interesting thing as a follower to actually say, I have choice and I choose to follow or I don't choose to follow. And I'm only going to follow you because I really like the way you lead. I really enjoy this game. Like, I have friends. I have this one friend, and she and I would go on like great road trips, right? And she loved planning. Like, she loved finding these cool B&Bs, and she loved finding the best little cafes in the middle of nowhere. And I was the one with the car, and she would say, "Okay, I really want to go on this road trip. Do you want to go?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, for sure." And we'd gone on a few road trips together. And one day she looked at me and she said, "Am I kind of controlling and bossy? Like, I kind of feel like I'm always making," like, she wasn't feeling bad that she had to make all the rules or something. She loved it. Like, she was literally, it was all she could do to not find the next cool cafe, right, that she wanted to go to. And she says, "Am I controlling you? Like, I don't want to, I want to consider you, you matter and everything." And I said, "Are you kidding? I love this." I said, like, "I'm always in control. I'm always the boss. I'm always the leader. I love just being along for the ride. We always go to cool cafes. You always find amazing places to stay. You genuinely love the planning aspect. And I just have to drive and enjoy the scenery. I love this." She was like, "Oh, good, because I really, really love planning these things." Right? Like, it really is a win-win. And oftentimes with parenting, it's the same. When the parents really consider the fact that, okay, right now I have children, and if I'm going to travel, regardless of, maybe I love, it's sort of an interesting balance between also considering self. Like, maybe I really love to go through art galleries, but I have 4 children aged, 3 to 7, right? Going to an art gallery is not going to be any fun. So the question becomes, how do I do it so it really works for the whole, right? That's all. I may be able to go to art galleries in, 20 years when my kids are long grown or they're teenagers or something else. But there's something about being that parent and saying, right now my role is parent. Okay. And it doesn't mean you have to live at water parks or never go to art galleries. But what's the balance? What's the balance that really makes it whole for everybody? And again, I come back to that some people are really born leaders, and they enjoy the challenge of finding out what works for everybody. And other people really struggle with it. And most people, I don't think, have even seen healthy leadership, right? And so people are kind of just, they're trying, but it's really hard. And the other thing that's interesting about being a parent is it comes back to this idea of being a thought leader or being an example that people follow. Because this leader-follower thing has a number of different dynamics. And one of them is this: we are all on a project. This person has been chosen to be the coordinator because they're excellent at it. And that's what's going to be creating a beautiful system for us to create in, right? Sort of this. But then there's other people, like, say, someone like Martin Luther King Jr. or something, who, for whatever reason, people went, "Whoa, I like what this guy's thinking." And they went, "Okay, I'm listening," right? That dynamic can happen in parenting as well. But it's not about preaching. It's not about, here are my ideas. It's actually just simply living your life. Like, when you actually live an authentic life based on your truth, whatever that truth is, that's what we model for the children. That the children go, they don't have to become what you become because you've worked really hard to actually live according to your truth. And so the children go, "Well, what's my truth? How do I want to live?" Right? Like, so we can be leaders in all kinds of different ways, whether we like that leadership role or not. Just simply being authentic, is a beautiful way to be a leader. All right, I'm going to look at your questions. Can you please give me tips for when I feel leadership burnout as a single mom? I know I'm a natural leader and I'm meant to be in this role, but some days I wake up and I just don't want to. Oh, it's such a good question. I think one of the big challenges as a leader and in being a single mom is that the members of your project team aren't independent um, players. They actually not only require guidance and leadership, they also still need a lot of energetic help, right? You're being a mom, like you're really caring for them. And that is exhausting. That's a really, really real truth. So years ago, I was a farmer. I married a farmer. And we used to have banty hens, banty chickens, which are these, if you just take a normal chicken and shrink it to about a quarter of its size, and they came in fun colors and stuff, so they're just sweet and fun. They're kind of like pets in the barn kind of thing. They're just super fun and they run around the yard. Well, one year, the banty hen laid eggs. And there was she laid, I don't know, about 12 eggs or something. So you see this tiny little skinny chicken. And she would go into the pen and she would lift up her whole body and drop her wings down over the eggs because she had to incubate them, right? And she would sit there all day long. And then she would have to get up and go get water and come back. And just so you know, do you know that when they incubate eggs, like in a factory kind of idea, they actually have to replicate the fact that mom has to get up and go get water every so often. So there's a slight cooling period and then a warm period again. Weird things you learn about being a farmer. Anyway, so she would sit there with her wings and her heat on the eggs. And I was fascinated by this. Like, I was a city girl too, right? Like, I wasn't raised on a farm. And so one day I went out to the barn, and all of a sudden she's lying there and she's just like this pancake. It's like she's like a pancake of feathers with a head in the middle, right? Like, amazing, right? So she's out there, and then all of a sudden all these little beaks pop out from all the wings. Like this, all these little beaks. And there's 12 little beaks peeking out from her feathers. And I am fascinated because at this point too, my kids were really young. I had foster kids. I was just run ragged, right? I wasn't a single mom, but I was an exhausted mom. And I'm watching this mom who has now given birth to 12 chicks, right? I don't know. Maybe that's why I don't know why I was so enthralled. But I'm watching. And all of a sudden, of course, she would have to get up to go get water. But now she has 12 little babies under the wing. So she would get up and she'd kind of cluck, and she'd kind of like she'd kind of do this. It's almost like she was clucking from her body out, like almost under the wings or something. And she'd kind of do this little cluck. And then she would stand up, and all of a sudden there's all these little feet underneath all the wings. And the whole thing would kind of go, and they would all just like as a group come like over here to the water, and she would get the water, and then she would come back over here and sit back down on the nest. And I'm watching this going, I don't even know. I don't even know if I was consciously, I was just absorbing it, I think, more than anything. It was later that I analyzed it a lot. But what was interesting is, and she would do this all day. She would get up and go over to the feed, and she would come back. And every so often, a little chicken, like literally, a little chicken would kind of escape, and she'd be like, right? And like, that little chicken would get back under the wing, right? I watched this endlessly until each little chicken got strong enough and brave enough to get out from under the wing and kind of run around until they were all running around. And I swear that mama just sat in the middle, like sleeping. Like, I'm sure she just rested. But what I learned, especially as a mom, was there was strength in that mama hen. It wasn't, she cared for the chickens, but she was the center. And that was what shifted for me as a mother, because before that, I kind of ran around my children. Like I was sort of doing their bidding all the time. I had to take care of them, so I had to run around them. And there was something so powerful about watching this chicken and seeing myself in my center, being aware of the wingspan that I had, and understanding that for as long as these children are under my wing, literally, I am the center. And it's in my strength that they'll feel safe. So it really does come back to this whole idea of your center matters more than anything. And if you're feeling burnout, it's really important that everybody rests for a while. You know what I mean? Like it might be, you know what, this week, we're all going to read books. We're all going to go to bed early. We're all going to do this because mama's tired. And the likelihood is if mama's tired, everybody's tired. There's a lot going on in the world and everybody's adjusting to the big dials shifting. And there's something about, I mean, I just watched that chicken, and if she was tired, nobody's going out. And it's not some weird controlling thing, because your entire intention as a mom is for the health and welfare of your children and you. So it's just a case of saying, you can even say to the kids, you know what? I'm a little tired right now, so I just want the next few days to be kind of chill. You know, and we just work it out, and we figure out as a leader to care for me, because I know that my tank is empty. It needs to be refilled. So as a leader, I'm going to make some choices so that that can happen, so that my tank can be refilled. And then we can all be, you know, we can all go play again, right? Or maybe it's a case of, as a leader, saying, you know, I need to find help. I need to pull in some resources. I need to do that for the company. I maybe need an external consultant. I don't mean a consultant, but maybe someone to come and help out while we have a nap, you know? And your son has special needs. Wow, that's a really big deal. But it's interesting too, like I think a really strong leader also is really clear about it. It's kind of like, if you have a child that has special needs, then you have special needs, right? Like it's sort of like we don't impose expectations in places where it's different, right? It's just different, and it might require more recharging time. But no, it's a huge challenge. It's not there's a million little things to say, but it's a huge challenge. Being a single parent is a challenge, but special needs make it definitely difficult. I felt like a leader, but have a more quiet personality. I sometimes go into situations that have strong personalities, but it's more of a power trip for them. Any thoughts on that? I find that sometimes because we've had such dysfunctional leadership, we often think to ourselves, you know what, I don't want to work with a leadership model, right? I want to have a cooperative model. And there are situations where a cooperative model where there is no distinct leader can work, right? I've personally never seen one. When we were on the farm, we were an organic dairy farm. So we were part of an organic farmers co-op. And there was a time when I was on the board of directors of that. And there was this desperate desire to have this cooperative model. And again, I'm not saying it doesn't always work. I'm sure there are instances, and maybe that's what we're going into. But the challenge is, it was almost like we were pretending it was a cooperative model. But then what happened was the strong personalities that you're talking about would rise up and take charge anyway. And they weren't necessarily good leaders. They were just strong personalities who maybe just wanted to throw their weight around or feel or control the others. And this is what was happening in the co-op, which was why I ended up on the board of directors, because they were so much, they had such beautiful hearts. Like they really just, a lot of people who begin in the organic industry, they really are just very connected to the land. They're very granola type people, right? And they were like, no, let's do this cooperatively. But then all it would take was a couple personalities come in that were sort of this power over dynamic, and those strong personalities just took over. And all of a sudden, all these trusting people were just sort of getting taken, like literally, right? And what I learned from that was healthy leadership is a benefit to the whole. And so if you have a quiet personality, but you would actually love to be in a leadership role, sometimes we actually do need a structure that allows for you to be in that position. But it takes a lot of training. And there are certain environments where it's just not possible because people, there are just so many broken egos in there. So I have to tell you this example. One year, I had been invited to Sweden to teach, like a Tantra weekend. And the woman who had invited me, super amazing Swedish woman, like really, really cool. Another year, I had met a really good friend who lived in England. And she was just amazing. And so about 4 or 5 years ago, I felt really called to gather those two women, plus my sister, one of my sisters, and the four of us to all meet in New York City. And we would have a goddess gathering in New York City, the four of us. Because, of course, none of them knew each other, obviously, right? But I thought, no, four of us, downtown New York City, how exciting would that be? I don't know why I felt called to do this, but this was the call. And we were talking about this leader-follower dynamic, this masculine-feminine dynamic, and how that played out in the world. Well, of course, the four of us were so different. Like, you know, goddesses in our own right, however we want to interpret that. But really, 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 really different. And what we all wanted to do in the day was really different. And it was really bizarre. We ended up staying in an Airbnb in the Bronx. So then we would get on a subway and travel to Manhattan. And we would try to decide what we wanted to do because, of course, none of us were even American. We didn't know anything about New York City, right? And so, and I was really, really passionate. I'm really passionate about this masculine, feminine, leader, follower, giver, receiver. Like this to me is such a huge deal in the world right now because I think it's what we're growing into. So we couldn't figure out what to do in the day. One person wanted to eat Italian. One person wanted to do this. One person wanted to see the bridge. So one person wanted to see the Statue of Liberty. Everybody was sort of had all these goals and we only had 5 days together or something. So I came up with an experiment and I said, okay, what if we each take a turn being the leader and we explore what it is to be a healthy leader and a healthy follower? And this was a really interesting experiment, right? Because we had to actually talk about it and say, what does it mean to be a healthy leader? Well, a healthy leader doesn't just decide for the day what everyone's going to do. A healthy leader considers every single person in the room, in the group, and then makes the choices based on that. The followers, what does it mean to be a healthy follower? Well, we trust our leader and we give feedback. As if they say, what does everybody want to do? We don't just say whatever you want. Like we actually say, I'm kind of feeling like I'd love some sushi. Or I'd really love to go see the Statue of Liberty. Like, as followers, as the project team, we also have to say, here's how I see it, here's what I'd love to do. And that gives the leader the fodder to make the choices for the day. And then once the leader has a sense of what's going on, the discipline of the follower is to follow and to relax and enjoy the ride and don't worry about it. Right? And then each of us would have a day where we were the leader. It was fascinating. It was so fascinating to actually practice following and understanding the benefits of that, understanding the joy in it. And then on the day that we were the leader, we also understood the challenge of being the leader and the challenge of great feedback and all this kind of thing. And it was funny, actually, I'd forgotten all about this until right now. We talked about it at the end of it because it was really interesting. And we thought, wow, wouldn't this be an amazing retreat? Like a real live retreat, which all we did, you just gather a bunch of people together and everyone takes a turn being the leader and everyone takes turns being the follower. And because, I mean, you can't beat real experience, right? And I say this only in answer to your comment about, what if you have a quiet personality, but you love to be in a leadership role, but everyone has these strong personalities. We have to actually be playing with people who are willing to play, right? So let's say, like, I described an ideal situation where people really loved following and they were happy to be in the following role. But I think we've all been in situations where that's not the case, right? There is that personality that just wants to keep turning it back to them because they don't want to follow. They want to be the leader. There's an ego attachment there. There's something, right? Or there's history. Who knows? And then we have a different dance to play. This is where real life begins again. And we have to go, how do I lead this person? How do I include them in the whole when maybe they're not much of a team player? But maybe as a consciousness, we're all just growing together in it, right? Well, thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a wonderful day or evening, and I will see you soon.